Can we talk money? Now, one of the measurements of yourself that is very important and yet we don't know much about is your credit rating. Look, we all know our height and our weight mostly, don't we? But what exactly is a credit rating? Who's in charge of coming up with your credit rating? What does it mean? Is it a number? Even if you were told what your credit rating was, would you know how to interpret it? Can you fix a poor credit rating? These are some of the questions that we've been thinking about this morning. And if you've got some, please give us a call on 1300 973 300. Let me introduce you to Graham Dossel, who's the CEO of MyCRA Lawyers, and he joins us now here at ABC Law. G'day, Graham.
G'day, Nick. How are you, mate?
Oh, I'm not too bad. Now, what is a credit rating? What do you get if it's published and it's sent to you?
You get a document that outlines what you've been up to for the last 5 years. It says it has a record of your address history, what you've applied for. Today it has your repayment history as well, so it says how well you've made your repayments over the last 2 years. It has a list of, as I said before, applications, and then a list of people that you may not have paid on time and been defaulted, court judgments. It has court writs. It has a lot of information that opens you up to scrutiny by all of the lenders.
Okay, 5 years. What happens with what you've done before that?
Most of that information just drops off. It automatically deletes after 5 years.
Right.
There are some...
So if I was bankrupt 6 years ago, and since then I've been a good financial citizen, does that matter?
It means that the bankruptcy won't show up on the credit file today. It drops off after 5 years, as long as you have been a good citizen, because they can keep you in a bit longer in a bankruptcy.
Right.
There's a couple of instances where something may stay on there a bit longer. If a default gets converted to a clear out, if you've run away and not been in contact with the creditor and they can't find you, they can upgrade that to a clear out. That'll stay on for 7 years.
A clear out. Okay, so a clear out means you aren't just refusing, you've actually run away and not entered into any further correspondence.
Yes.
Right.
If they can't find you for 6 months, they can upgrade the default listing to a clear out.
And that sounds like a much worse judgment upon you.
Well, it's actually classed as a serious credit infringement, and the Act defines it as an act of fraud. So this is pretty serious.
Yeah, okay, that is serious. Okay, so what I'm getting from this is that you can redeem your credit rating if you behave really impeccably for 5 years.
Yeah, it will get better if you've behaved. However, if you've got no further credit involvement in that 5 years, then what could happen is your credit score could still stay low because you've been out of the credit game.
So you have to be actively maintaining credit that is either a credit card or a home loan or a personal loan of some sort. Is that correct?
Well, see, this is the really tough part, Nick, and it's unfortunate that it's not a published formula, but the credit reporting bodies have their own algorithms, and they say that if you apply for too much finance, you're bad. If you don't apply for enough finance, you're bad. If you apply for the wrong sort of finance, you're bad. All the good things you do...
What do you mean the wrong sort of finance? So if I go to one of those payday lenders, that puts me in the bad category?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
In fact, if you have just an inquiry with a payday lender, most other lenders will automatically decline you for finance.
Oh, come on.
No, just the inquiry. You don't even have to...
An inquiry. So I see one of those ads for those apps which give you your instant money, you know, and I just ring up and then I decide, no, it's not for me.
Yep.
That is a black mark on me.
If that app has checked your credit rating, yes. If it's recorded on the credit file, you are now in trouble trying to borrow money from anybody else but a payday lender.
God, good thing I didn't do that as a journalist to do a bit of research. That might have just put a black spot on me.
Well, then you could do the research showing how to remove those black spots. You go the whole circle.
Well, that was my next question. I'm sorry, I'm just stunned by that part. Even just an inquiry shows that I'm looking for easy credit and that I'm a bit desperate.
Well, just one inquiry with a payday lender will destroy your credit rating. we find that a lot of people, unfortunately, they have more than just one because, like you said, they're just doing some research. They might jump on and check with 3 or 4 in the same evening, and then they oh, no, that stuff's too expensive, I don't want to pay those rates or whatever else. Then they go to get traditional finance. That's another hit on the credit file, and they get a decline because of the payday lender inquiries.
Wow. Okay, what if I went into a pawn shop, PAWN, and, and I've got I've got some very expensive jewellery which I've inherited, and I go to them and I say, I want, $500 to tide me over. Does that have the same effect as going to a payday lender?
It shouldn't do. There should be no reason they check your credit rating.
Because they've got collateral.
Because they've got collateral, exactly.
Right. Okay.
But, Nick, just quickly too, it's not just the payday lenders' inquiries that can negatively affect you. The listeners will probably know that these days, to get a mortgage, most mortgages come with mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
And it's the mortgage insurers who make the final decision whether or not they're going to have the money loaned out to that particular person. Now, the lender might say yes to an application, but the mortgage insurer is highly likely to refuse your application if you've got 4 normal lender inquiries, like credit card, bank, car loan, etc., in the last 6 months, or as few as just 6 in the last 12 months in total. That's an automatic decline from the most mortgage companies.
Why? What's the logic here?
Because you must be desperate because you're trying for so much finance.
Right. So every inquiry, not just you signing up to a loan, not you getting a credit card, but just an inquiry is instantly on your credit rating.
Absolutely.
I'm staggered by this news.
Scary, isn't it?
I'm so glad I'm so glad you've been helping me out with this. Okay. Now, we did talk about getting out of a bad credit rating. 5 years of good behaviour is obviously one. What if you've got into a relationship, for instance, and your partner's got a bad credit rating? You share a home loan, for instance. You are then divorced, etc. Can you separate yours from theirs?
Well, that comes down to the lender, I suppose, and what you're going to do with the asset that's financed.
Yeah.
A credit file or a credit report is an individual thing. So you have your own personal credit file and your partner has their own personal credit file.
Yes.
And even if you're in a joint loan, the loan might be joint, but the credit files still stay separated. So as long as you sell that property or refinance it in your name or their name, it's their credit score won't impact on you unless you're trying to borrow money with them still.
Okay, but sometimes it's the case that they haven't paid the loan and it's gone into default. It's not your fault. You've acted with the best of intentions. Can you inherit or get a bad credit rating transmitted to you?
Well, let's say that you have separated from your partner, and the partner has you bought a car loan together. You've got a car together, and you decide, you know what, I'm going to go and buy a new car. This car loan, we'll just leave it with my partner. The partner agrees they're going to make the payments. Everything's sweet. You move on. 2 years later, you decide you're going to buy a house, and it turns out that your partner didn't actually pay all of those car loan payments.
Yep.
And yes, you have probably
they've done a clear out. Yep.
Yep. Even if they just missed a couple of payments.
Yep.
You only have to be to get a default just over 60 days overdue, and you've got a default that's going to stay there for 5 years. Let's say 2 years down the track, you go and check your credit rating. You now may have a default because your ex-partner didn't pay the bill on time, and because your name is on the loan, you would have both got a default in that circumstance.
And can you get that wiped from your own account if you give evidence of your own behaviour that you've behaved with the best of intentions?
From that scenario, no. The only way a default can be removed from a credit file is if it's proven that it was placed unlawfully in the first place. So just because you make an appeal and say, look, I was good, it wasn't my fault, you still were party to the loan, you still had a responsibility to that loan. So if you weren't talking to the other person on that loan, that's not the lender's fault. that in their eyes is your fault. So technically,
because you've signed up to it jointly, you are jointly responsible, and you have to make sure that they're paying their end of it, or get your name taken off the loan.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
However, that's the theory behind the credit rating system, because again, it's only negative information that's based. Doesn't matter how nice you are, how good you are, the good work doesn't get reflected on the credit rating. It's still only the lack of negative or the negative that gets reflected on the credit rating.
Oh, it does, though, the way you were talking about it. If you get into a loan that's not out of the ordinary, the right sort of credit, as you said, and you pay that properly for the 5 years, your credit rating will reflect that, won't it?
It will reflect that there's no negative on there, yes, that's right.
So there's no real total positive, there's just negative. You start with zero and you go backwards, is what you're telling me.
Pretty much. You probably start with a reasonably good credit score, and it only gets worse if you do the wrong thing. Now, Nick, the defaults can be removed, inquiries can be removed, and the only way, as I said, that can happen, though, is where it's proven to be unlawful. Thankfully, that's what we do, and we can get that done to hell. But a client can do a lot of this themselves as well. Let's say, using the example of you split up with your partner, the partner didn't pay the car loan, you go to get a loan in a couple of years' time and find you've got a default. Well, there's a problem there for a start, because the lenders have an obligation to let you know on 3 separate occasions before they default list you.
Mm.
So if you didn't know about it, then they probably haven't notified you.
So that's where the unlawful addition to the credit rating comes in.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, it might be your fault again, because you might not have told the lender that you moved. But if the lender, for instance, had your email address, they should have been emailing you the notices as well. If it was your fault and you just simply walked away because you thought the partner was going to do it, you didn't update anybody with anything, then it makes it a little harder. However, there are still so many areas that the creditors make mistakes. In fact, we get more than 91% of defaults removed because the creditors are really good at lending money, but not quite so good at actually following the rules in doing all those little things they need to do to make sure that you know about the default first.
Right. And what do you get in the end? You said there was an algorithm that all the different credit reporting agencies used. Do you get a final number, like a -5 or a 0 or something like that?
Well, theoretically, the credit score given by Equifax, which most people would remember as Veda Advantage, and prior to that was Baycorp, they today published that they'll give you a score somewhere between 0 and 1,200. In reality, the highest credit score I've ever seen, and we see thousands of them, was about 990-something, 990. We haven't seen over 1,000 yet. I have seen no credit score available where somebody was bankrupt. I have seen negative credit scores in the negative hundreds because somebody had I think it was a Part 9 debt agreement. With those things that are advertised on TV, we'll fix your credit rating, we'll consolidate all your bills into one government-approved funding. That doesn't fix your credit rating. That wrecks you for 7 years because they actually stay, it doesn't come off the credit file until 2 years after you pay out the Part 9 debt agreement. And people think they're doing the right thing by paying off their creditors. But what in fact is happening is their credit rating is ruined for 5 years.
Really? So if I realise I'm in trouble and I go to an organisation that helps me consolidate everything and I make an agreement with all of my creditors that I'll take a certain amount of years to pay it all off, I'm trying to be a responsible citizen, that in some ways can be worse. That can make the situation worse.
Well, yes, because if you do that yourself, if you go to one of the banks and get a personal loan to pay out all your debts and consolidate that way, then that's fine because you've got a loan, you're paying it out. And you might still call all of the lenders yourself and make an agreement with them that instead of taking 100 cents on the dollar, they might give you a discount if you pay it off in one go. Yeah. You can do that yourself. But when you go to a third-party organisation that is using a Part 9 debt agreement, it is Part 9 of the Bankruptcy Act. So you are committing an act of bankruptcy, and that is reflected on your credit score for the period that you are in the Part 9 debt agreement and for 2 years after you finalise and pay it out. So a lot of people that go into these things, they think they're doing the right thing. They're sold on a dream of pay it off, do the right thing, it'll fix you. Whereas in fact, it doesn't. It means that you have this debt still hanging around your neck for 5 years, and you can't borrow money through traditional means during that 5 years, and then for a further 2 years after the debt agreement is finalised, you've still got a bad credit rating.
When you come up with a bad credit rating, how does that affect your life?
It means that you can't get a mobile phone on a payment plan. It means that you can't get an increase in your credit card. It means you can't buy a home. It means that I actually did a survey the other day, and I belong to a group of real estate agents. And I asked the question, do any of your property managers check credit ratings before you approve a rental application? And it wasn't many, but out of the few hundred that responded, there were probably 10 that said they do. So that means that more and more real estate agents are even checking a credit rating prior to approving a rental application. So it affects so many areas of your life. There are even employers that check a credit rating prior to giving a job. I know that with mortgage brokers, you've got to have a clean credit rating to be a member of the mortgage brokering associations.
Or to be a mortgage broker?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I suppose if you're giving advice, probably that would be a reasonable thing to think that you're taking your own advice.
The trouble with this, though, Nick, is that let's say that apart from being a brilliant announcer on the ABC, that you had a business on the side, and in that business you decided that you wanted to engage a supplier. That supplier didn't provide you the product or service you wanted, so you had a dispute with that supplier. And this supplier turns out to be one of those that may have a bit of a track record for doing the wrong thing, and they immediately file a claimant statement of claim in the court against you to recover the money. They sue you for the money. As soon as they do that, you've immediately got a bad credit rating for 5 years before it even goes to court.
What, just engaging a supplier?
Not the engaging of the supplier suing you, filing a claimant statement of claim in the magistrate's court. So you get served with the claim, and you've got to file a defence and go and see a judge. Before you even file the defence, before you go and see the judge, you've now got a what's called an other court action.
So that could be a vexatious claim, and before it's even the judgment is handed down, you're affected. Your credit rating is affected.
Absolutely. And up until May 2015, all you needed to do was get what's called a notice of discontinuance, and that would be taken off your credit file. In their wisdom, the credit reporting bodies decided to change that in May 2015. So since then, a notice of discontinuance means your credit file will be still marked with the fact that you've got this writ served against you, even if it goes nowhere, but now it's been discontinued. The lawyers of the world know that that means that the matter's finalised, it's dead, it's over, can't go any further. It was sorted out. But lenders see it as, oh, this bloke had to be sued to pay his bill. So it's an automatic decline like that.
But surely, that's just a bit of legal education, isn't it?
Well, we've been trying to educate the credit reporting bodies for quite some time. We put submission into PricewaterhouseCoopers' review of the credit reporting code in November last year. It's published on the Privacy Commission's website, that we suggested it's ludicrous. It's not allowed for under the legislation, as far as my lawyers tell me. And it appears that PricewaterhouseCoopers agreed with us that it shouldn't be on the credit file. However, the credit reporting bodies still choose to put it there. So that'll be an interesting one to follow, to see what happens when a determination is made, because anybody with that writ on their credit file could have been potentially seriously disadvantaged by this, when legally it shouldn't perhaps have been there if that ruling is determined, and they may or may not have a cause of action. That'll be interesting.
Wow. And can you get your credit report? Do you pay someone like an Equifax, or do you have to go through a solicitor like yourself?
You can come through us, but you don't need to. All of the credit reporting bodies are legally required to provide you with a minimum of one free credit report every year. That won't give you your credit score. They charge you for the credit score, but you can just jump onto their individual websites and request one. Now, one
free one per year.
Mm-hmm.
That's in the law, is it?
It is. Now, of course, they're a business, so they like to make money. They got smacked recently, 12 months ago, for hiding the free report and only promoting the paid report.
Oh, what a surprise. Okay.
However, the smack was reasonably large, so it's now a lot easier to find the free application form. There are 4 credit reporting bodies in Australia, 4 consumer credit reporting bodies in Australia that most people know about, and they are Equifax, which used to be, as I said, Vader Advantage, There's Ilion, which up until recently was called Dun & Bradstreet. That's number 2. Number 3 is Experian. They've only been doing it for a few years. There's not all of the lenders use Experian. And if you're in Melbourne or Tassie area, you might have come across Tasmanian Collection Services. And they generally don't report anything outside of that geographical area. But theoretically, if you want to know how clean you are, you should probably get a free copy or a paid copy from each of those to make sure that your credit score is still, or your credit rating is still good. I said before that Equifax is the only one that provides score today. That wasn't quite correct. Experian also provided score. It's a different score because it's different information and it's their own algorithm. So you could have a really good Experian and a really bad Equifax credit score. Different subscribers have put different information on those different files, which is why you've got to check all of them.
Graham, it's been disturbing and very educational talking to you today, and I thank you very much for giving us a bit of your time.
Nick, just before I go, if I can, if people want to get access to the credit files free, we actually set up a website specifically to tie all of these credit files into one place.
Oh, really?
It's just freecreditrating.com.au. Someone can go there, get a copy of the little report. It'll show them exactly where they need to go, give them the direct link to their free credit rating on all 4 of the credit reporting bodies. We even threw in Equifax New Zealand for our mates across the creek.
All right, good on you, mate. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
Graham Dossel from My CRA Lawyers. I found that absolutely fascinating. You probably could tell by the way my jaw was hitting the desk. Even an inquiry with a payday lender can slash your credit rating. I had no idea. Amazing. It's 97.3 ABC Illawarra. Time for some news headlines now, and here is Stephen White.